1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2 3, and I'm live. Okay. Hey everybody, welcome to Mastering the Matrix. Let me see, I'm gonna go live here on TikTok too. I'm going to see if I can do both. Let me double check and go live. Okay, it is working. Hold on, let me set this up the right way. Awesome. Excellent. So let me make an announcement and then I will start. Hey everybody, welcome. Guys, if you want to listen in to today's teaching, click the link in bio. You can join my Discord server because I'm gonna be giving new insights on a weekly basis. So you can join the live video there, or you can stay here on TikTok. So as you guys can see, I have a live session right now on my Discord server. You are welcome to join, or you can listen in here on TikTok. Today we're going to be talking about the coming solar eclipse and the confusion that I see. A lot of people are talking about the sun being in Pisces, the sun being in Aries, the eclipse being in Aries, and there's a lot of confusion where people are confusing astrology with astronomy. So today we're going to cover that topic, and we're going to talk about some other things too. We're going to be talking about the most recent news where Putin announced that Jesus was black, and the controversy around that, and how he's exploiting this information as a form of control. So we're also going to be talking about that. So yeah, you guys can join here on the TikTok, or you're welcome to join on the Discord server. Okay. Fuck, I need to exit here. Okay, log out. How do I do this? Okay, on Discord. What are you chatting about? Okay, back here. Okay, it's working. Right. Hey guys, here on TikTok, click the link in bio, join my Discord server. I'm gonna start a new live session today. Today we're gonna be talking about three different topics. Do I need to get a piece of paper? No, not today. All right, so let's begin. Welcome, guys, to Mastering the Matrix. Let me just adjust this. Today, I want to talk about a topic that I see online, especially on TikTok, where a lot of people are talking about the coming solar eclipse. And there's one theme that seems to be repeating itself, where people are stating that the coming solar eclipse in Aries, that they have observed that the sun is not in Aries. And this is creating a lot of confusion. Some people are stating that this is due to the Gregorian calendar being superimposed over the sun cycle, and that there are in fact 13 months in the year, not 12, and that's why the dates are not aligned, they're not matching with the Gregorian calendar, and henceforth not aligning with the astrological placements of the sun. And there have also been some really ridiculous statements. For example, a person stated that the sun slowed down in the sign of Virgo. Some other people are claiming that the sun actually went in retrograde motion, which, if you know anything about astrology, you would know that the sun and the moon are the only planets that cannot go in retrograde. And yes, I do call them planets because the sun and the moon are in fact planets. Now, regardless of what you've been taught and what you know, The sun and the moon are planets. And why do we call them planets? Well, we need to understand the origin of the word planets. The word planets, as you from my Discord server, I've written about this before. By the way, I'm feeling a little bit nervous because I'm not used to this. But the word planets actually derives from the etymology Greek word planetes. And planetes actually means wanderers, as in an object in the sky that is traveling, it is wandering. So when we observe the sun and the moon, do they move in the sky? Are they wandering in the sky? Yes, they are. So therefore, they are wanderers. So therefore, they are planetes. They are planets. The sun and the moon are planets. So that's number one. So and the sun and the moon are the only planets that do not go in retrograde motion, meaning that they do not appear to go backwards in the sky. They are in constant movement. They never stop, they never slow down, they never go in backwards motions. So to make this claim that someone witnessed the sun stop or slow down is completely busted. Okay, the sun does not slow down. So we're going to be talking about this. Now, we're going to also be talking about the current claim that people are spreading online saying that Jesus is black and that Putin somehow is telling the whole world that Jesus is black. And by the way, he never said that. He actually never stated those words. He never said Jesus is black. This is completely miscomprehension, and this is just another form of control. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to the underlying principles of what it means to be black and how this corresponds to the underlying principles of Saturn and wealth and achievement and success. We're going to look at the underlying principles of what this actually means, because you need to understand it is symbolic. All of this is symbolism. All of this is allegory. Okay, and naturally, people are going to take all of this data, literally, because unfortunately, that's the world that we live in today. People think that the world is evolving, that humanity somehow we are better today than we were 1,000 years ago, and I can tell you that that's not the truth at all. It's not the truth at all. 500 years ago, everybody knew that the Earth was a flat plane, and regardless of your beliefs, there are fundamental underlying principles that can show and indicate um, what we consider the truth. Okay, there are, and these are undeniable. There are undeniable principles that show the truth, and there's a very big difference between beliefs, philosophy, religion, spirituality, physics, and what I will try to explain today in a logical manner, because reality, the way we perceive it, although may seem that you have this option of conveying your own beliefs and your own methods, and there's just variables in the measures that you take to understand reality. You need to understand one thing: despite your own beliefs and philosophy, there are underlying principles of reality, and these underlying principles of reality can be quantified and measured. And no, it is not science. It is not the standardized version of science, because science relies on sensory data. Sensory data is what you believe with your eyes, what you believe with what you can see, taste, touch, smell. And that doesn't show the underlying principles of reality. That only shows how reality is manifested on the physical plane. Now, what I say, there might be a lot of gray area in the things that I'm saying, but you need to comprehend that you need a foundation of comprehension and understanding to truly understand the things that I'm about to talk and about to say today, which some of you, if you're on my Discord server, you guys know. So, and the third topic we're going to be covering today is AI, artificial intelligence, the evolution of artificial intelligence, where it's going to lead us. We're going to be using astrology to claim some predictions that I have seen in the future, especially in the next coming months, beginning from May. May is going to be a very significant month. That's going to propel society to a whole new level. I mean, um, I say this to a lot of friends online many times that I don't think people understand how quickly all this new technology and development is going to come. To give you a reference, human beings, we've had 100 years of development only in the past 4 years. 100 years of evolution in the past 4 years. So as time goes by, this 100 years of progression and development um, gets quicker and quicker. We are able to experience and see this development at a much faster pace. So this is why I mean a lot of people that I talk to online, probably you guys watching here right now on TikTok, you all probably have the sense that life and that time it seems to be going faster, and you can't quite explain why that is. So we're going to be talking about why that happens. That has to do with two phenomena. One phenomenon is to do with the star Sirius, with the Sirius constellation and its distance to the Earth, that completely affects the way that we perceive time and the way that actually time literally speeds up, because you see Sirius comes closer to the Earth and further away from the Earth every 50 years. And the closer that it is to the Earth, it actually speeds up time by 1 second every single day. So, for those of you who have the perception that time has sped up, you're not wrong. It has. Time does literally speed up. It's not a belief, it's not something, a sense that you have. It literally has sped up and it actually slows down. So, we'll talk about that too. So, let's start with the first topic. The first topic, which is about the solar eclipse and the confusion of where it's going to be placed. So, if we look at Western astrology, right now in Western astrology, the sun has entered the zodiac sign of Aries. Now, to keep it simple, Western astrology looks at the relationship between the sun and the earth. Some might say at the seasons and the earth. So, for example, right now we can see that spring has begun because the sun is in the zodiac sign of Aries in Western astrology. And in order to understand this, you need to have a foundation of understanding of the precision of the equinoxes and the relationship between the sun and the ecliptic. So you can do that in your own time. I'm not going to explain how that works right now. But you cannot use astrology to explain astronomy, because 90% of the people that you see online, they use Western astrology, and Western astrology does not correlate to the astronomical alignments of the planets in the sky, to the true positions of the planets and the stars in the sky. They use a different system. And to keep it simple, Western astrology, the planets are in fact 23 degrees ahead of what we see in the sky. So if we go out right now and you're able to observe where the planets are right now in real time, you will see that the sun is actually in the constellation of Pisces. And if you open apps, many apps for astrology, they will tell you that the sun is in Aries. So this is why it's creating the confusion. People believe in that, wait a minute, the eclipse is going to be in Aries, but if I open up an app, an astronomy app, sorry, not an astrology. Astrology studies the relationship of the planets and the stars and the effect they have on our psyche and human behavior, whereas astronomy studies the literal planets and stars. And this is the confusion that's happening online right now. Because if you read many articles online, on newspapers, on media articles, they will tell you that the eclipse is going to happen in the sign of Aries. And then, lo and behold, when people open these astronomy apps, it shows that the sun is in Pisces, which it is. So you need to understand the difference between astronomy and astrology, first of all. Second of all, there are different systems of astrology. There is Western astrology, which is just the relationship between the sun and the earth, which is basically the seasons. We are in the beginning of spring. I live in the northern hemisphere. I live in Europe. And yes, it's very evident to see that spring has begun. In fact, just this past few days, the sun is warming up. The weather is getting brighter. Days are getting longer. So spring has begun. And it's beautiful to see. And that's Western astrology, when we see the relationship between the sun and the earth. But there's another system of astrology, which is sidereal astrology. Now that's a system, and there's another astrology called Vedic astrology. Vedic astrology uses the system of sidereal astrology. Vedic astrology is astrology from the east that comes from India. In India, it's called Jyotish astrology. Where in the West we call it Vedic astrology, and they use the system of sidereal. Sidereal system aligns with astronomy. They are symbiotic. It means that Vedic astrology, aka sidereal astrology, also considers the true placement of the stars and the planets in the sky, meaning that if they see the sun is in Pisces, then when they plot a chart of that current day, they will actually write that the sun was in Pisces. Unlike Western astrology, which is 23 degrees ahead because of the seasons. So that's number two. So where is the solar eclipse happening? Well, if you look at Western astrology, yes, the solar eclipse will be in the sign of Aries. But if we look at astronomy, the solar eclipse will be in Pisces. And if we look at sidereal astrology, the same as astronomy, the sun will be in Pisces. So that's number three, and I hope that clears things out. Now, you need to also understand that when it comes to astrology, and I'm going to make a bold statement and claim right now, and I hope that no astrologers out there take any offense. But if you are an astrologer, if you're a veteran astrologer, then I keep getting phone calls. Hold on. 1 second, guys. Hold on, I just got a call. Okay, good. All right, so if you've been an astrologer for a long time, and if you truly understand astrology, because astrology, first of all, astrology is not a belief. Astrology is a language, just like numbers, just like mathematics. Do you believe in mathematics? Do you need to have some kind of philosophical belief about mathematics to truly accept mathematics? Or is mathematics a system? A system where we can quantify our reality by using numbers. Right? It's not a belief. Mathematics is not a belief. Mathematics is a system. Mathematics is a language. And you can be a mathematician where you understand mathematics. You understand the relationship of numbers and how they function, and create formulas and equations to understand how these numbers behave. Right? So mathematics, it's not a belief system. Right? It is a system, but it's not a belief. Right? 1 and 1 equals 2, and we can observe that anywhere we go in the universe. If extraterrestrial life was to exist, which it doesn't now, and that's a whole other topic, but let's say you were able to travel to another planet, right? It doesn't matter what language, what philosophy, what beliefs in that planet, what they have in that planet, mathematics will still exist in that planet, right? 1 plus 1 is still equals 2. So mathematics is not a belief. Mathematics is it's a system. It is language. And astrology is the same way. It is not a philosophy. It's not something that you have to believe in. It's a system. It's a system. It's a language. Now, whether you understand that language or not, it does not dismiss the fact that it is, in fact, a system. It is a system. And now, what is a system? A system is something that we can measure and quantify, and that has underlying principles that can be measured and quantified. And it's a cycle. So astrology is a cycle, right? The planets have a constant behavior and movement. We can see this constant motion, and we can measure this motion, and we can measure events, and we can measure the impact it has on psyche, on physiology, on biology, on on the planet. So it is not a belief; it is a system. It is a language that you need to learn. And when you, just like any language, when you learn that language, you either know how to interpret that language or not. So it doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not. It's not a belief. It is not a philosophy. Astrology is a language. Now, anyone can learn that language. But just as if any other normal, natural human language, it takes time to truly understand that language. So we need to establish this. Astrology is not a belief system. A belief system, a philosophy would be religion. A belief would be scientific theories. Now, why do I say scientific theories? Because scientific theories, it's in the word, it is a theory. And not only that, the truth of the matter is that science uses sensory data. Sensory data does not define the underlying principles of reality. It's really that simple. So we can say that, I don't know, I'm trying to come up with an example. Okay, salt. Okay, now salt is a mineral that has been used to preserve things for a very long time. Okay, so somewhere on the earth, I don't know exactly where it is, but there's a place on earth where there's a cave. It's a salt cave, and inside this salt cave is where they archive many things, like films, books, I don't know, you name it, all kinds of objects and things, right? And they're not stored in a facility, in a very like high-tech facility. They're stored inside a salt cave. So why salt? Well, salt is known to be very good for conservation. And if we look at sensory data, meaning molecules, atoms, physics, chemistry, it can give us some understanding of why that is, right? But the truth of the matter is the underlying principle of salt is made out of carbon. And if we look further at the underlying principles of carbon, well, carbon is an extension of metaphysics. It's a metaphysical property that corresponds to Saturn. And Saturn is the planet that governs literal time. In fact, Saturn in Greek mythology was known as Chronos. This is where we get the word chronological, right? As in time, because Saturn governs time. And Saturn governs the element of carbon. Carbon, 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons, 666. 666 is not the number of the devil. 666, is not the number of Satan. Satan is a word for Saturn. So Saturn governs the element of carbon, which is 666. Carbon. What are you made up of mostly? What is all life made up of? Carbon. We are carbon-based animals. All life is carbon-based. plants, trees, a horse, a whale, a fish, a human. Anything that is living is carbon based. So you see, when we look at religion, when most people are praying, when they read the Helios Biblios, the Bible, the God that is mostly referenced in the scriptures is Saturn. They are unknowingly devoting and praying to Saturn. Saturn is what we call in astrology the sky daddy, because Saturn is literally God. The Babylonians knew this, the Sumerians knew this. They call them El and Enki. Okay, which has been, this information has been completely distorted and taken out of proportions, because again, people take things literally. And there's underlying principles and comprehension that you need to know in order to understand all these things. So Saturn rules the element of carbon, and Saturn is all about longevity. For example, in astrology, if you have Saturn in the 8th house being the house of death, and if you have Saturn in the 8th house of death, it means that Saturn will slow your death. It means that you will have a very long life, because Saturn slows things down. And why does Saturn slow things down? Well, if we look at astronomy, if we look at the cycle and the orbit of the planets around the sun. So in the heliocentric model, you have the sun in the center and you have the planets going around the sun. Mercury is the fastest planet that orbits the sun. Then it would be Venus, then Mars, then Earth, so on and so forth. The planet that orbits the slowest from the 7 first principal planets is actually Saturn. Saturn takes 30 years to orbit the sun, so it is the slowest moving planet. So Saturn is all about taking things very, very slowly. It governs time. So when you have Saturn in the house of death in astrology, it slows down your death, meaning that you will have very good longevity. You will live a very long time. So understanding these characteristics of the electromagnetic properties of Saturn, which extend to everything that is carbon based, because Saturn rules carbon. By the way, if you look at carbon under a microscope, it's actually a cube. And if you look at the North Pole of Saturn, it's a hexagon, which is a two-dimensional cube. So, and this is why there's symbolism of cubes all around the planet. You'll see cubes literally in every film, every story. You'll see cube structures and statues and symbols in most Western countries. I mean, you'll see them everywhere. And that's basically a symbolism of Saturn. And the element of carbon is a cube. If you look at salt under a microscope, you'll see tiny little cubes. So now that we understand the characteristics of Saturn, and that Saturn means longevity, and that it slows things down, it preserves things. So naturally, when we look at this cave where they archive all types of things, it's not in a high-tech facility. The facility is a salt cave, because salt slows things down. Salt stops things from decaying. Salt stops things from dying because of the characteristics of Saturn. So now you see why sensory data, why science will never be able to explain that. Now they can find some type of excuse and theories using chemistry, but the underlying principle of why salt is such a good preservative, is because it is a metaphysical property of Saturn. So all of these planets, not only Saturn, have these metaphysical properties. And this is why sensory data science is also just a belief. It's a belief system. Just as religion is, and just as all other systems, they are a belief system. So, knowing this, we can consider astrology as one of the best tools and systems to use into understanding the reality around you. So I hope that clears some things up. Now let's take a look at the second topic of today, which is actually related to Saturn. And that is Putin making the statement and the claim that Jesus is black, which, by the way, like I said at the beginning of this, he never said that. Putin never said that Jesus is black. That's what uneducated, weak-minded people do. I'm sorry for my words, but it's the truth. Okay, religion is to control the weak-minded. Why? You see, if we look at the world as a whole, where are the most, if we look at the demographics of the planet, the people that most believe in religion, where are they located? Are they located in poor regions or rich regions? As in, in the Western world can be considered, a rich regions, rich zones of the world. And if we look at places like Africa, the Middle East, South America, these places that I just mentioned have the highest demographic of religious followers. Now, isn't that a coincidence? And if we look at the Western world, if we look at Europe and the United States, I know the United States, there's a lot of Christians and so on, but relatively speaking, right, when we compare these nations to the other poorer nations, like the numbers are way less, way less. Okay? Religion is a form of control, and it's to control the weak-minded. And if you're one of them, don't take offense with this. Use this as an opportunity to understand that that's exactly what it is. It's a form of control. In fact, I believe that the word religion, where was it? I'm sorry. I forgot right now, but let's move on. So, back in the day when religion was being forced in all these poorer nations, which were all pagan in the past, right? They all, in Africa, they all understood that it was the planets, right? Egypt, great example. They all understood that it was the planets. Now they created stories and myths around the planets, right? If we look at the sun god Ra and Set and Osiris, Horus. So if we look at Ra, Horus, and Set, these are all personifications of different factors of the sun. Ra is the sun rising. Horus is the sun moving. Set is the sunset. This is where we get the word sunset. So it's different phases of the sun. And they created myths and stories of the planets. The Egyptians did this, the Greeks did this, and the Romans did this. I mean, the Romans made it very, very very evident, because they literally called the gods names of the planets. Mars, god of war. Venus, god of fertility, beauty, and prosperity. Sun, the god of leadership, courage, and king status, and so on and so forth, right? So they understood this, and it wasn't until Christianity came into these territories, and the first time that they were exposed to Christianity, these people from these territories were like, what the fuck are you talking about? This Jesus man, I don't believe in it. That's bullshit. They didn't believe in it. Nobody believed in it. Everyone back then had common sense. Everybody back then exercised critical thinking. And everyone knew back then that you lived on a flat plane, and that is the planets that control and govern everything. Everyone knew that. but they were forced. They were forced into believing this fake dogma, and they were indoctrinated. And all their sacred knowledge was taken away. All their knowledge about astrology was removed. They stole everything from these nations. They were forced into believing false dogma in order to control them, because the Jews, which are the ones that took power and control of these people, they knew that by controlling the information of the masses, the information that they're exposed to, the things that they are taught, they can control their beliefs. And by controlling their beliefs, they can control their behavior, thus creating a form of slavery. Now, there's a lot to this topic, and at the same time, there isn't, because it's really quite simple. It's really quite simple. Religion is a form of control. It has always been and always will be, because they can create division and they can make us fight against each other. It's that simple. If I rule the planet and I make you believe in a God, and I make another group of people believe in a different God, and I tell you, oh, if people don't believe in your God, they're evil. And if I tell the other group of people, if people don't believe in your God, you should kill them, then what's that going to create? It's going to create division, war, conflict. So it's a great way to keep both groups distracted with each other, fight against each other, instead of fighting the real threat. And the threat is those who are in power, those who are oppressing them, those who have taken away their ancestral knowledge. That's exactly what happened. That's what continues to happen, and people still do not wake up. And unfortunately, this happens the most in poor countries. Why poor countries? It's really simple. Because it gives them hope. In a country where there is grief and suffering, and you have nothing else to hope for, there you go. Here we go. We give you something to believe in. This is the hope. We're gonna give you the hope that there is actually a savior who's gonna come and save you. So it gives them hope. It gives them belief, and they hope that, oh, I don't care if I'm poor. I don't care if the people governing me are mistreating me, forcing me into slavery, because I know one day my God will return, my prophet, my Messiah, and he will free me. It's the easiest form of control. So now why am I talking about this? Because of the recent claim that people are spreading out. They're saying that Putin claimed that Jesus is black. By the way, again, third time or fourth time I've said this, he never said that. The color black, melanated skin, and this is a whole other topic that I won't get too deep into right now, but black is a symbol of the unknown. First of all, it's a direct symbology of Saturn. Saturn rules darkness, because everything derives from darkness. Think about this logically. As I speak, where are my words and thoughts coming from? They come from my mind. Does my mind live in the light, or does it live in darkness? Right? If we look at this from an anatomical point of view, like you have the brain, it's encapsulated inside your skull. There's light. Light doesn't go through your skull. Your brain it lives in darkness. So all your thoughts are manifested in darkness. These thoughts then manifest into sound, which makes up the words that I'm speaking right now. So everything comes from darkness. When you are born inside the womb, is there light inside the womb? There's no light inside the womb. You're in darkness. And then when you're born, you come into darkness. You come into light. When the day begins, every day you wake up, before you wake up, before the day starts, it was in darkness. It was at night, right? The night is in darkness, and then the sun rises from the east, and then the light comes. So it's a symbol. Anytime you see the color black, anytime you see darkness, anytime you see melanated skin in these, drawings, ancient drawings and scriptures and so on, it's a symbol of meaning the unknown, because darkness also means not knowing something. Okay, and that's where the term to be enlightened comes from, which is the opposite. When you are enlightened, it has nothing to do with how spiritual you are, how divine you are. An enlightened person simply means someone that knows, that you know something. Okay, that's what it means. So every single person on the planet is enlightened, but of course, some are more enlightened in certain fields than others. The secret society known as the Illuminati is not a secret society. It doesn't exist. The Illuminati is not a secret cult somewhere where in the shadows that the elite go to, every weekend and do rituals. Illuminati is an adjective. It means illuminated, it means enlightened. I can consider myself a member of the Illuminati because I am enlightened, I am aware, I am consciously aware, I know things. It's to know, it's when you know. So you see the color black or melanated skin, it's a symbol of not knowing because you're in the dark when you have your eyes closed. If I put you in a maze right now, and if I put you inside a maze right now, you need to find your way through this maze from one point to the other to exit that maze. But if I give you a map, sorry, maybe not a map. Let's say the maze is in darkness, like literal darkness. But then if I give you a torch, if I give you a torch, you have a light. Again, this is simply an analogy. If I give you a torch and have a light, you're able to travel through this maze a lot easier because the light shows you the way. So that's what darkness and light means. That's what's being the symbol of black people when you see these drawings in scriptures, and then you see the sun halo behind them. It's not that they were literally black. Black, darkness is a symbol of Saturn. And Saturn characteristics are all about challenges. It's about obstacles. Now think about this logically. Are you born enlightened? Nobody is born enlightened. You have to learn, right? And learning doesn't happen in a day. No matter what you're learning, no matter what field you're interested in, it has nothing to do with divinities or spirituality or religion. An atheist who is an incredible engineer is enlightened. Why? Because he's enlightened in that field. He knows that field. But in order for him to become an engineer, he had to study. He wasn't born with that information. He wasn't born with that data. He had to go to school. He had to go to university. Not only that, he had to go through experience. And through all of that experience, until he became a veteran professional engineer, there were many hardships and obstacles and challenges. He had to study. He had to do work experience. He had to go through many mistakes. So you see, darkness is a symbol of that experience, of that hardship. Once you overcome that hardship, which takes a long time, because why does it take a long time? Because hardship is governed by Saturn. Just like I said at the beginning of this session, Saturn is a very slow moving planet. So hardship and obstacles will take a long time. And then once Saturn makes its full circle around the sun, this is called a Saturn return in astrology, and boom, you're into the light. There's no more hardships anymore. Now you know. Now you know. This is the symbol also, by the way. This is the reference that the Freemasons make, right? That's 30-degree Mason, 31, 32, and 33-degree Mason. Jesus died at 33 years old. It's all a reference to Saturn's orbit and to you becoming enlightened. When we look at the reference of the Passion of Christ, Jesus carrying the cross is an opened box. If you close the cross like an origami, it actually becomes a box, a cube. The cube is a reference to Saturn. What it means that in life you have to go through hardships for 30 years. And when you reach 30 years old, you will meet, you'll have the biggest hardship of your life. And at 33, you are reborn, just like Jesus died at 33 and then he was reborn. The cross, Jesus carrying the cross, is a symbol of Saturn's hardships. And at 30, you have your Saturn return, where Saturn teaches you who you are. When it's the moment that you know who you are. And everybody goes through this. It doesn't matter who you are, what the color of your skin, your ethnicity, your beliefs, your religion, it doesn't matter. Because like I said, astrology is not a belief system. This is not a philosophy. This is a system, a language that you need to learn to read and understand. And the elite and the people in power know this very, very well. So this is what it refers to. This is why these drawings of people who are black and are melanated, this is what it's exposing. They are in the unknown. It's not literally that they were black. It's that they were going through hardships. It's that they are in the unknown. And for them to become enlightened, they first must travel through darkness. That's the symbology of the color black, of darkness, and being literally black. Now, this is also why, and what I'm going to say right now, it's a very sensitive subject, but I want you to look at this from an objective perspective and based on the things that I just shared with you. Why is it that black people endure the biggest challenges compared to those who are white? Is it because of the color of the skin? Yes, but why is it the color of the skin and not their character? Because just like salt and carbon is a physical manifestation that corresponds to Saturn, well, so are black people. Black people are the children of Saturn, white people are the children of the sun. Now, why is this? Because the sun corresponds to the color white, literally the color white, also the color gold. This is why white people have blonde hair. So, and black people are the children of Saturn. Now, the children of Saturn, Saturn is all about, again, very slow moving planet. We have a saying in astrology. Hi, Ugnius Labas. Hi, everybody. We have a saying in astrology about Saturn, and we say that Saturn delays but never denies. It means that Saturn will delay your rewards and your treasures, but it won't deny them. There will be a point in life where you will achieve what you want to achieve, but not before you go through all these hardships and struggles. And unfortunately, being black, you're going to have the most hardships and struggles because you are ruled by the planet Saturn, and Saturn is very slow moving, and you're going to attract hardships and struggles. Not only that, Saturn being the opposite of the sun governs the government, kings, queens, people with authority, fame. This is why these people worship the sun too. This is why in Egypt they worship the sun, because by worshiping the sun, you're going to attract these traits, you're going to attract these rewards. One way that you can worship the sun, every morning when the sun rises, you can present it water. I won't get into that right now, but the sun corresponds to white people and Saturn corresponds to black people. This is why black people and black nations have hardships and challenges. And it has nothing to do with racism, it has nothing to do with religion, it has nothing to do with beliefs. These are the metaphysical properties that are imprinted on you the moment that you were born. In fact, even in the Bible, correct me if I'm wrong, but even in the Bible, it I don't know word by word, so but I know that it says that um, somewhere in the Bible. So someone that knows that, please write it down. I know that in the Bible it says that black people, the reason that they were black is because they were punished by God. Again, this has nothing to do with racism. It's symbolic. It's a symbol. It's allegory of the planets. Did you know that Saturn is also the planet of karma, and is the planet of judgment, and it punishes you? So wherever you have Saturn in astrology, you're going to be punished in that area of life. So being born black, you have to be very, very careful, because the color of the skin in which you are born, even if you don't understand astrology, well, you have to in some way, but let's say you didn't. Let's say that you knew somehow the characteristics of the planets without knowing astrology, because you don't need to know about the planets through astrology. You can learn about the planets even without astrology. Just by knowing the color that a person is born in, you already know right away if they are cursed or not, if they will experience hardships or not. Now, can a white person experience hardships and challenges? Of course, everybody does, because everybody has Saturn in their natal chart, everyone. But this is where we get the word white privilege, because it is in fact a privilege. And this has nothing to do with politics or racism, nothing. This is to do with the metaphysical properties of the planets that govern these characteristics, that govern your pigmentation. So Saturn is justice. I think it comes down to karma. Hi, yes, it is. So like I'm saying, Saturn is the, I said this before, so welcome. Saturn governs karma. So by being black, you are naturally going to be born with punishments, with hardships and challenges. Again, it has nothing to do with racism. These are the metaphysical properties of the planets. Now, like I was continuing, can a white person be born with this too? Yes, of course. I can give you examples, because I'm an astrologer and I have read hundreds of people. And I can tell you, for example, a white person that has Saturn in the first house, they will be treated the same as a person who is from a minority group and who is black. They will be treated the same, because it has nothing to do with the color of your skin. It has to do with the underlying principles of what governs that manifestation. So a white person with Saturn in the first house will be treated the same as a black person in a minority community. We can basically say that that white person with Saturn in the first house, they will be treated, they are black. And I've seen this many times. Saturn is a planet of very, very hard challenges and obstructions. But if you're able to endure it, and you must endure it, like here's the thing, you don't have a choice. The moment that you're governed and ruled by Saturn, you don't have a choice. You have to endure that pain. But after 30 years of enduring that pain, you will reap the rewards if you were of service, if you were cautious, if you were not impulsive, if you paid your karmic debt to Saturn. Have you looked into Vedic astrology? Yes, I'm a Vedic astrologer. So we need to understand the underlying principles and mechanics and dynamics of Saturn. So by looking at these melanated black people in these scriptures, in these drawings, it is not literally that they were black. It corresponds to Saturn. So that's the most important thing. Another factor of this topic that we're looking at, religion and Jesus, is the fact that he never existed. I mean, Jesus is a personification of the Son. If you look at some basic principles of the story of Jesus, he was followed by 12 disciples. Well, the 12 disciples are literally the 12 zodiac signs in the sky. Jesus was betrayed by Judas. Judas corresponds to the zodiac sign of Scorpio. And the reason that he was betrayed by Judas, aka Scorpio, is because if we look at the lunar cycle, the moon spends more time in Taurus than it does in any other zodiac sign. And the moon is a direct opposition of Scorpio. If we look at in the sky when the moon is in Taurus, and if we were to use the personifications of these zodiac signs, well, Scorpio, aka Judas, will be looking directly at Taurus. And Scorpio is the only zodiac sign that can look directly at Taurus. No other zodiac sign can look at Taurus. So you see, the moon would spend, let's say, it begins at the start of the zodiac. So it starts in Aries. The moon will go in Aries, then it will transit to Taurus, then Gemini, and so on. It'll go all around the zodiac, and then once it begins again in Aries, it will spend more time in Taurus, and it will spend the longest time in Taurus. So the only one that could observe this was the zodiac sign Scorpio. And then when the moon reaches Scorpio again, Scorpio will be like, hey, I saw what you did. You spend more time with Taurus. What you doing? So this is why Scorpio has these traits of jealousy, envy, and revenge. And this is why in the Bible it was Judas who betrayed Jesus. It is a reference to the lunar cycle, because Jesus is not only exclusively a personification of the sun, Jesus is a personification of the luminaries as well as Saturn. There's references here in the Bible about this too. So I have some questions here. Have you looked into Vedic astrology? It's a 7.5-year cycle. Yeah, you're just talking about the Sadesati. We're not talking about that today. What can we do about karmic debt? Is that why people need glasses, handicapped, etc.? So karmic debt, by the way, I'm not wearing glasses. These are blue light glasses. But to answer your question about karmic debt, first of all, you need to understand what your karmic debt is. And to understand your karmic debt, you need to look at where your Saturn is placed in your chart. That's number one. Number two, you need to look at your karmic debt houses, which are your 6th and 8th and 12th houses. Number three, you need to look at your retrograde planets, because retrograde planets are also karmic, and they're also karmic zodiac signs or karmic placements. So first of all, you need to understand what your karmic debt is, and the only way to do that is through analyzing your natal chart. There are certain karmic debts that take longer. The karmic debts that take the longest is where your Saturn is. For example, if you have Saturn in the 5th house, well, your karmic debt is going to be all about your growing up, your childhood, about how you develop and learn and grow as a person, including the development of your intelligence. So people with Saturn in the 5th house have a karmic debt towards learning, towards growing up. They will have a very hard childhood. They will have a very strict, they will have obstacles in learning. So they might have, hold on, I gotta do this. So Saturn in the 5th house doesn't mean that their childhood is ruined and it's doomed. They can have a great childhood, great parents, all of this, but there will be obstacles in developing as a child. For example, you will be a very slow learner. You might be considered, very low intelligence as a child with Saturn in the 5th house, and you will have problems when it comes to you might be bullied at school, or in school. If you're not bullied, you'll definitely have struggles and obstacles in learning. You'll have obstacles and struggles with friends in school. And as an adult, this teaches you to take that area of life with caution. You have to be cautious, and you have to be very disciplined and very strict when it comes to learning, when it comes to your intelligent and creative expression with Saturn in the fifth house. And it's only until you're 30, like I mentioned before, because of the whole Saturn cycle, it's only until you're 30 when you finally released from this karma. It takes 30 years. So that's the longest karma. You have to look at where Saturn is. And everyone has different karma. And just, you'll be, by the way, you'll be judged when you're 30 by Saturn. And you'll be judged for 2.5 years. During those 2.5 years, basically what Saturn will look at you is, that's the first judgment. Saturn will look at you and say, okay, what did you learn in these past 30 years? I put obstacles in your life when it came to learning, when it came to education. I put obstacles in your life when it came to creativity and your dating life and having fun, because the fifth house is also about dating life and having fun and all these things. And Saturn says, I made your life shit and hell in that area of life of 30 years. What did you learn from it? And when you're 30, you're like, okay, here's what I learned from it. And you have to show what you've learned from it. Now, of course, unconsciously, people won't know this at all, but they'll have to show, okay, what I've learned. Now, if you haven't learned shit, which you would have, but if you haven't learned shit, if you can't demonstrate what you've learned, then at 30 years old, you have what is called your Saturn return, and Saturn will judge you. And Saturn will say, okay, you didn't learn jack shit in these 30 years, even though I purposely created hardship in that area of life for you. So now that I'm back, I'm going to teach you. And Saturn will teach you. And you'll have no choice whatsoever. So between 30 to 33, you can have a very fucked up life if you didn't learn from these karmic lessons that Saturn tried to teach you during those 30 years. But let's say that you did learn. Let's say that you turned 30 years old, and from all these mistakes you made in that particular area of life, you've learned from them. And with Saturn in the fifth house, you've learned that you have to take learning very seriously. You have to be disciplined, that there's no shortcuts, that you have to be very disciplined and serious when it comes to your dating life, that you have to be very serious when it comes to the way that you express yourself. You can't, because Saturn hates ego, by the way. So a person who has Saturn in the fifth house, they can't be like, hey, look at me, I'm great and amazing. Saturn would hate that. So they might be that way when they're younger, but with Saturn in the fifth house, they'll teach them you can't be that way. So if they learn that, and by the time they're 30, they've learned that, then Saturn will reward you. This is where we get Christmas from. Christmas was traditionally known as Saturnalia. This is why you wrap gifts in boxes. Boxes, a cube, is a reference, a symbol of Saturn, and so on. So if you've learned your lesson when you're 30, you get rewards. So this is why it's so important, and I strongly advocate astrology to be implemented in the education system, because it's basically a cheat code. You know the suffering and the grief and the karmas that you're going to experience in your life. Instead of going blindly all your life for 30 years, not knowing who you are, what you're doing, what you're supposed to be doing, what you shouldn't supposed to be doing, with astrology you can know right away. Right away. Now imagine how amazing that would be, how easy your life would be if you knew that if you have Saturn in the fifth house, you know that your childhood education is going to be fucked up, and that you can't, that area of life you have to take it very seriously. By the way, wherever you have Saturn, you should not expect any joy in that area of life. Now, this is not to make you feel scared or anyone to feel like, oh, you're doomed. No, because there are 12 houses in astrology, 12 areas of life. Okay, so 11 areas of life, you can have a lot of fun and enjoy them. It's only one area of life where you have to be extremely dedicated, cautious, and disciplined. Okay, there's one. I don't have Saturn in the fifth house. I have Saturn in my seventh house, so it's different. So I have a question here. Everyone gets judged by Saturn at 30, only Saturn in fifth house. Everybody gets judged by Saturn at 30. Everyone. It doesn't matter your religion, your background, your ethnicity, your beliefs, your philosophy. This happens to everybody. If you're an atheist, if you believe in God, if you believe in astrology or not, this is going to happen to everyone. And it happens to everybody. This is the reference of, like I said, Jesus dying when he was 33. So it happens to every single person. It doesn't matter who you are. He died at 33, yes, because that's when you die. Not literally. At 33, you die. And you become a new person because at 33, because by 30, you are judged. At 30 years of age, you are judged. And it takes 3 years for you to adapt to that new change, right? Let's say you're judged and you go through this horrible experience. For example, Saturn in the fifth house can also mean that you will not have a child, because the fifth house is children, that you cannot have children until after 30. Now, if you do have a child before you're 30, that child will be your Saturn. That child, you will have a very difficult relationship, challenging relationship with that child. So people with Saturn in the fifth house should not have children until after 30, because children correspond to the fifth house. So you're basically activating, you're making that house stronger. You shouldn't make that house stronger. So you need to be very careful wherever your Saturn house is. Wait until you're 30 to go out there and explore that area of life. Don't rush into it. Saturn hates impulsivity. He hates hurrying. He hates shortcuts. So, yes, when you're 30, you will be judged. By 33, you should adapt and learn about this new judgment, about this new person who you become, because you're given the light. And by 33, you are reborn. You're a new person. You will never be the same as you were before. Ask anyone, anybody. They were not the same person. They will tell you that they changed. And it doesn't matter what background, what ethnicity, what religion, what belief. It doesn't matter. Every single person will tell you that during that age, they became a different person. And this is because of the underlying principles of astrology. Jesus dying at 33 is a symbol of this. He was reborn. You will be reborn. If you're not of age yet, of 30 years of age, you will be reborn. Between the moment that you're born until 30 years of age, the free will that you have is very limited. You have more free will after 30 years old. Because before 30, you have to experience your retrograde planet karmic lessons. You have to experience your Saturn return, biggest karma of all. So, although you have some free will, you can experience all these lessons whether you want to or not. You have no choice. But after 30, between that age, 30, 33, Saturn lets you go and says, okay, hey, I've told you what you need to do. I've told you who you need to be. I told you how to live this life. Let's see what you're going to do. And then you have 30 years of complete free will. And if you have any retrograde planets, I hope that for your sake you learned how to manage the energies of those planets. But between 30 and 60, you're on your own. You're completely free. You're your own person. These planets and these karmas will still have an underlying role. They will still be there. But between 30 and 60, you have free reign to do what you want. And Saturn is watching. This is why you see the symbolism of the eye all the time. Saturn is watching you. And then by 60 years old, when Saturn makes another full circle again, this is the second judgment. And then at that time, Saturn will judge you again. At 60 years of age, you'll be judged. And Saturn will be like, okay, hey, so I gave you lessons between your birth and 30 years of age. At 30, I showed you these lessons. How did you use these lessons between 30 to 60? What did you do with your life? Now, if you played your role the right way, then at 60, you will be rewarded. Saturn will say, okay, I've been watching you. Good job, well done. Here you go. Everything you've been working for these last 30 years, I'm now going to reward you. And you get rewarded in all kinds of ways, okay? It's different for everybody depending on your natal chart. You might get rewarded a house. You might get rewarded materialism, money, house, these types of things. Or you might be rewarded in a different way. You might be rewarded with health. Let's say you're suffering with a disease and then at 60, boom, the disease disappears. Or let's say that you don't have good relationships with anyone. You have no friendships, you have no family, no one takes care of you. And then by 60, boom, suddenly you gain this attention from people. People start loving you, taking care of you. So everyone gets rewarded in completely different ways. Let's say that your reward might not be physical at all, and nothing tangible. Your reward might be that suddenly you have a new insight into the meaning of life. But at 60, you will get your second judgment, 100%. So between 30 to 60, you better be careful about how you live your life. Now, let's say that you didn't learn. And let's say that from 30 to 60, you keep making the same mistakes. You keep playing out the same negative karma. So what happens at 60? You will get judged. And at 60, well, let's say that Saturn watches you and says, hey, I see what you did. You didn't learn jack shit. So I'm now going to punish you. So at 60, you get sick. At 60, you develop a chronic illness. At 60, your children and your family leave you. At 60, you lose all your wealth. At 60, your house burns down. That's the punishment and karma that Saturn can bring. So in many societies, Saturn is feared. They fear Saturn. If you go to India, most people fear Saturn because they understand the judgment that it can bring. But as an astrologer, I can tell you this. Knowing the mechanics of Saturn is the best thing you can do. Right? We have this expression in English, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. Saturn is that first enemy, but it can also be your best friend if you work with it. Saturn can be your best friend if you learn how to work with it. Saturn is that teacher in your school who is very strict, who perhaps discriminates against you, right? But that very strict parent, people who have very strict parents, but that strict parent who wants the best for their child, and they know that, hey, do your homework so you can succeed in life, so you can pass your tests, you can go to university. Don't go out and play first. Homework comes first, work comes first. Now after your homework, I want you to go and work out. I want you to eat healthy, no sweets. That's Saturn. Yes, it might be very strict, it might be very harsh with you, but it wants the best for you. And if you do and follow Saturn's discipline, imagine that child who does his homework, eats well, works out, all these things, right? Takes it very seriously. Damn, by the time that child is 21 years old, he might be a very successful entrepreneur. So yes, Saturn is harsh, but you see the beauty of it. If you make Saturn your best friend, and if you follow its rules, if you follow the measures that it puts in place in your life, man, the sooner you can work with Saturn, the earlier, the better the rewards. I mean, not the earlier, because Saturn won't give you rewards early, but can definitely increase the rewards by 1,000,000. And here's the really good thing about the rewards that Saturn gives you, because Saturn is about very long lasting, very slow. It's about longevity. The rewards that Saturn gives you are very long lasting. So if Saturn gives you a negative reward, let's say that it makes you develop a chronic illness, you're going to have that illness for a long time. It's not going to be something that you can go to the medic and, get a prescription and, within 2 weeks you feel okay. No, it's not going to be like that. If Saturn punishes you with a chronic illness, you're going to be with that illness for a very long time. But on the other hand, if it's a positive reward, if Saturn rewards you, let's say, with a material reward, money, it's got that with wealth, because Saturn governs wealth, then that wealth is going to be long lasting. If Saturn rewards you with a relationship, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a wife, or a husband, that wife or husband is going to be for a very long time. So let's just look at some comments here. And by the way, thank you everybody for joining me. I really appreciate you being here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Let's see, karma always comes back. It may not come straight away, but it will get you eventually, always. Depending on your placements too. Depending on your placement. If you have Saturn in Aries, my God, terrible. If you have Saturn in the 7th house, be very careful. It depends on the area of life. It depends with who. It depends where. There's many areas of life. So we cannot generalize how karma returns, how quick it returns, where and with who. There's a lot of people who can get away with really nasty shit if they have Saturn placed in different houses. There are certain people who just shouldn't do certain things. It completely depends where your personal natal Saturn is, in what house and in what sign. Because trust me, believe me, although Saturn is the planet of justice, there are people out there who can get away with shit, with a lot of shit, because this Saturn is not judging them in that way. Saturn is judging them in other areas. It's not judging them in the things they do. So here it says, you taught me a lot about Saturn. There's lots to learn, but it's important. It's the most important aspect of all your chart, and the whole mechanics of the universe is Saturn. Did you know, for example, we look at Queen Elizabeth II, who died, right? If we look at her burial ceremony, right, when she's walking in London and there's this whole parade, you see her coffin.
Hello?
Sorry. Okay, Scott, okay, hi, welcome. Just giving here a live on TikTok and stuff. I'm recording it here. So if we look at the burial ceremony of Queen Elizabeth II, right, at the start of her parade, there you see her coffin, which was made out of lead. Lead is lead is a mineral that corresponds to Saturn. And right behind her coffin, you saw a goat. Now you can find this on YouTube, because this is a symbol of Saturn. And why wasn't her coffin made up of wood, or even of gold? Right? This is the British monarchy we're talking about. It's because they are Saturn worshippers. They understand that all their wealth, all their greatness was a reward from Saturn. So lead is a symbol of Saturn. This is where we get the whole idea of turning lead into gold. It's the same thing as darkness into light, because lead corresponds to Saturn, which is darkness. Gold corresponds to the sun, which is the light, and it's enlightenment, it's knowledge. This is why people I was talking about Saturn in the 5th house. Saturn in the 5th house can definitely slow down your intellectual development, and it's only until 30 you actually become truly intelligent, when Saturn is like, okay, go out there and have freedom in learning. People with Sun in the 5th house are the complete opposite. People with Sun in the 5th house are very intelligent. From the moment they're born, they are born quote unquote enlightened. So lead is a symbol of Saturn. It's actually lead is composed of carbon, and carbon is the metaphysical properties of Saturn. And the goat behind Queen Elizabeth's coffin is a symbol of Capricorn. Capricorn is governed by Saturn. So You see, the devotion to Saturn and Satanism is a direct correspondence to Saturn worship. And these people devote their lives to understanding Saturn, and so should you. The sooner you do this, the sooner you understand your own Saturn placement, the sooner you understand the mechanics of Saturn, the sooner you can live a more prosperous life with less hardships, way less hardships. And instead of trying to figure things out on your own, spending 30 years of your life, you can analyze your chart using astrology and say, okay, if you have Saturn, let's say, if you have Saturn in the 12th house, then you're going to have troubles with wealth. You're going to be a person who you have to be very cautious when it comes to money. You won't be able to have any savings at all in your life. Zero. You will be born to a poor family, or if you're not born to a poor family, let's say you're born to a rich family, regardless of being born to a rich family, if you have Saturn there in the 12th house, even if you're born with a rich family, your rich parents will look at you like, hey, why aren't you capable of saving any money? And you're like, oh, I don't know why, just things happen and I don't know why. I always have to spend money on unnecessary things, or I just can't save any money. Now, how can that be if you're born to rich parents? Because you've got that Saturn in the 12th house. It's causing obstruction for you when it comes to material life and to saving any money. And until you're 30 years old, you won't be able to save jack shit. So because Saturn there is showing you have to be very cautious. You have to be very disciplined. That this will take a very long time. So for a person with this placement, it'll be good for them to invest their money. To invest money in, for example, in stocks, in shares, and even in cryptocurrency, it doesn't matter. And just leave it there. And wait 30 fucking years until you get your rewards. So the sooner that you know this, where your Saturn is, the sooner you understand the hardships and obstacles it can bring you, the better it will be for you. You will know that in that area of life, you have to be very strict. And here's the thing, no one is going to like it. Nobody likes where your Saturn placement is. Because, especially depending on many other placements and aspects, but no one will like it. And here's the thing that I've learned, that no matter how perfect, how beautiful or happy someone's life might seem, right? Because nowadays, how do we define happiness? We define happiness by a person who has no obstructions or challenges in their life, right? Who can have access to material wealth, friends, family, all these things. But I can tell you this, even these people that you might see as very successful, who might have a lot of money, they have obstacles and challenges, and they have areas of life where no matter what they do, they can't control it. They're very unhappy. I myself have many friends. In fact, all my friends are millionaires, all of them, every single one of them. And are they entirely happy? Absolutely not. And it has nothing to do with philosophy, politics, or your environment. It has nothing to do with this. It has to do where your Saturn is. So the sooner you understand this, the sooner you are able to work with Saturn rather than against it. And the sooner you work with Saturn, you won't reap the rewards any sooner, but you can definitely avoid challenges. You can just completely avoid them. If you have Saturn in the 7th house, for example, which is all about relationships and friendships and the way that you cooperate with people, then my suggestion to you as an astrologer is like, either you are very cautious about this until you're 30, or you just don't interact in that area of life at all. That would be my best advice. Don't have any relationships. Don't have any friendships. Don't get married. Wait until you're 30. Now, if you do want to have obstacles and challenges in your life, go ahead. Have a girlfriend, have friends, cooperate with people. But I can tell you this, if you do that with Saturn in the seventh house, these interactions are not going to make your life easier. They're going to make your life harder. Because by doing that, you're activating Saturn, because you have Saturn in the seventh house, which is people, relationships, cooperations, relationships, romantic relationships. So it's just better to avoid them altogether, avoid them completely. And if you do them out of 30, I guarantee you that there'll be no obstacles at all. I only have Saturn in my ninth and mid heaven, okay? What would having Saturn in the ninth and mid heaven mean for me? Okay, depends on the sign. So tell me your sign. But generally, Saturn in the ninth house, well, the ninth house is your philosophy. It's also your understanding and exploring of the world. So Saturn in the ninth house might make you an atheist. You're a Leo ascendant or Leo sun, let me know. Saturn in the house might make you an atheist, or at least it will make you very, you might not be interested in foreign affairs, you won't be interested in exploring the world, in traveling, you won't be interested in different cultures. And if you are interested in these things, because having Saturn there doesn't mean you're not interested in these things, you might become less interested in these things, because anytime you do approach these things, you face hardships, obstacles, struggles. So let's say with someone in the Saturn in the ninth house, let's say that they do travel. They travel a lot, right? Naturally, we would expect that someone with Saturn in the ninth house won't travel at all, because Saturn's putting an obstacle there. But that's not necessarily the case. It just means that there's obstacles when they travel, which later in that person might say, okay, hey, every time I travel, I experience, you know, what happened here? Okay, hold on, I have to change this.